No more talking, singing, zip.
But without my voice, how can I...
You'll have your looks, your pretty face. And don't underestimate the importance of body language.
There he goes, isn't he dreamy? Monsieur Gaston, oh he's so cute. Be still, my heart, I'm hardly breathing.
Belle?
Bonjour, Gaston. Gaston, may I have my book, please?
How can you read this? There's no pictures.
Well, some people use their imagination.
Belle, it's about time you got your head out of those books and paid attention to more important things. Like me.
Media has always focused on women's physical appearance. Laura Mulvey coined the term the male gaze, which explains how mainstream media portrays women in a certain way where they're seen as a pleasuring visual for heterosexual men. These portrayals of women through the male gaze ignore all other aspects of a woman besides beauty, therefore creating inaccurate representation and images of women in the media. Another main concern of feminist literature is challenging patriarchy and traditional culture. We have often seen depictions of women being subordinates or dependent on a man while also reinforcing traditional gender roles. There are more instances in which women are saved or reliant on a man instead of being portrayed as independent.
You are a princess, and I expect you to act like one.
With these expectations, and the way female roles were portrayed in Disney princesses films like Cinderella, Snow White, Beauty and the Beast, made it seem like a female role was only an asset to a male role. It was not until 2012, when Princess Merida, where Disney started to portray females in a new light. Disney portrayed females as strong, intelligent, and independent, characteristics that Princess Merida holds. Princess Merida teaches young females to choose their fates, not to be voiceless, and she also teaches females that if they choose, they can also be their own hero in their own stories. That happiness doesn't always have to depend on a man.
Disney movie Mulan, the protagonist Mulan is the epitome of what our female archetype is. She is strong, intelligent, beautiful, heroic, and brave. These characteristics, Disney filmmakers wanted to portray a female protagonist in a different light, especially since in past films where the female characters were always portrayed as a damsel in distress. In this film, Mulan is the heroine. In the beginning of the movie, we see the importance of beauty and femininity in order to find a male suitor. Being forced to conform to a patriarchal society in order to find a husband, you need to be well-mannered and have your appearance be as pristine as possible. In doing so, it will result in bringing honor to one's family. She rebels against these expectations and joins the Li Shang's regiment in place of her father. In refusing to conform to her gender role, she becomes an agent against patriarchy as she leaves home.
Within the scene, we view the male characters attempting to save the emperor by using their brute strength to open the doors. Mulan sees the issue at hand and quickly formulates a plan to combat this.
Hey guys, I've got an idea.
Due to the lack of protest from the male characters, the filmmakers thus challenged the notion that femininity and male identity are mutually exclusive, and that femininity represents weakness. During the scene, none of the characters are portrayed as fragile, clumsy, nor weak. Instead, that they are portrayed as strong, as well as in touch within their femininity.
Now, that's what I call Mongolian barbecue.
and thus dismantling the notion of gender roles by portraying women as more than your stereotypical damsel in distress, but also as a strong, confident, intelligent, and beautiful heroine that is greatly appreciated, especially within given context of Disney movies.
This next clip is from the TV show How to Get Away with Murder. The show embodies strong, developed, complex female characters, considering that the genre of the show, which is a legal murder mystery, is typically played by men. We usually only see female victims or female romantic interest in these types of shows. However, How to Get Away with Murder has legal female professionals and female law students. By showing a female being portrayed as strong, we are going against the norms of women being portrayed as stereotypically weak and without a voice. The brilliant, successful professor and mentor is Annalise Keating. She is respected, powerful, and in control, which is a very unusual sight on TV. We usually see women on TV who are never given as much history and depth as men. And if they are, it's usually only in relation to their status as a love interest or sex toy. In this series, we see multiple women given interesting backstories and multi-faced personalities that portray these women as actual people. Annalise Keating actively goes against the stereotypical personalities that women are so often stuck with. She is characterized as a strong, accomplished lawyer who is worthy of respect.
To testify that Tricia Stanley was killed by her boyfriend, David Allen.
You're way off base. I recommend you rein this in.
Explain why your eviction suit against Miss Morelli was dropped despite her inability to pay rent.
Keating?
Is it because her lost rent money was nothing compared to the millions you made once Miss Stanley was out of your way? Answer the question,
Keating,
Senator.
enough.
Why was Linda Morelli granted these concessions?
Mr. Chief Justice, I have extended great deference to the court by showing up here today, but I am not going to put up with this any longer.
I am sorry, Senator, if you do not have the time to answer for who bore the real cost of your development.
Objection!
Not just Tricia Stanley and her boyfriend, David Allen, who served 21 years in prison.
Your Honor, please.
For the thousands who were displaced in the name of lining your pockets.
Keating?
The majority whom were poor, powerless, and didn't bear the color of skin desirable to your business interests. You tore a community apart. You tore families apart. You destroyed lives, Senator. Admit it. Admit you killed Tricia Stanley and had my client, David Allen, set up for her murder.
We argue that there has been a new developed female archetype in popular culture that is progressive in terms of previous media representations. An example is the TV show Jane the Virgin, which follows an independent, intelligent, and successful woman aspiring to be an author. However, this female archetype isn't exactly the image we're completely striving for, taking into account that her life still focuses around a love story that gets in the way of her accomplishments and affects the decisions she makes in her life. This progression, but not yet achievement, is introduced to us by Susan Douglas with her term of enlightened sexism.
Start by explaining what you mean by enlightened sexism.
Sure. Enlightened sexism is a sneaky, subtle, new kind of sexism that seems to accept and even celebrate women's achievements on the surface, but underneath is really dedicated to the undoing of feminism and to keeping women, and especially young women, in their place.
And there's this illusion that all is done now with feminism. It's all going the way it should go, and everyone's got what they want.
Yeah, there are fantasies of power that we get, and this was really interesting for me when I started working on this book. And I started on it because I'd done this book Where the Girls Are back in the 90s, but by the early 2000s, when I would go to give talks about it, popular culture doesn't have that long a shelf life, and people started saying, well, what about Buffy? What about Ally McBeal? What about Desperate Housewives? And so I thought I'd go back to the 90s, which is where the Girls Are left off, and look up to the present. And so as I was watching, I began to be struck by this big difference between what was on offer for me and what was on offer for my then teenage daughter. And so if you think about the 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock strip at night on television, what are women doing? They're district attorneys, they're cops, they're law partners, they're surgeons, they're judges. The glass ceiling, done and done on all of those shows. So ironically, they've come to overrepresent how far women have come, and I began to be sort of struck by that.